scary stories. My sister had been dating this guy for 3 years. She told me that in 8th grade he stalked her. Just staring at her in the halls and asking about her schedule. I met him about a week after she told me this story. He seemed nice at the time. We talked a bit and then he asked me if I wanted to play Call of Duty. We played for about an hour and had some laughs. I didn't find anything off-putting. He seemed to be a generally nice guy. However, that was 3 years ago, and these past years, he has been getting weirder and weirder, and more obsessive. As in, he would constantly call my sister to ask what she was doing, and filled her phone with hundreds of texts when she didn't reply immediately. They had multiple breakups and arguments over these years. Just a few days ago, my sister's friend came to us hysterical, stating that he had threatened her life. But they're still together to this day. She also stated he probably had bugged my sister's car and phone because he knows all the texts she has sent, and showed up at her house when my sister's car was parked in the driveway. He did not even know where she lived. I am convinced too that her car is being traced. He even managed to track us down when we were with my grandparents on vacation. This all changed about 2 days before our vacation to California. I'm one of those people who stay up really late at night, even though it's a school day the next morning. I usually just binge watch videos on my computer while laying in bed. It was about 12 midnight on Saturday when I heard a faint screech. The sound sounded vague and distant. Then I heard a soft sound on my garage door opening. I assumed it was my sister coming home late, like my dad predicted. He left the garage door unlocked because he expected her to come home late. I heard smooth and soft footsteps walking up the wooden stairs, and then a shallow grunt. The footsteps slowly moved throughout the upstairs while I paused my video and sat up in fear. My sister would usually not care about being so quiet, and went straight to the bathroom to take off her makeup. The soft footsteps ensued. I would now like to mention that I do have a lock on my door. I convinced my dad to get me one 2 years ago because I am paranoid about someone attacking me by simply opening the unlocked door. I could hear the floorboards creak as the footsteps neared my door. I heard a hand graze the frame of my door and grasp the knob tightly. I held my breath, and my hand started to reach towards the wooden baseball bat I had under my bed. The doorknob turned slightly, but the lock restricted it from turning all the way. The intruder on the other side jiggled it a bit and seized. I grabbed my baseball bat and gradually made my way towards my door. I saw 2 gray shoes inches away from my door. I raised my bat defensively, ready to whack whoever picked the lock or busted down my door. The shoes slowly turned and strided away from my door. My sister's door opened, and a few moments later, I heard footsteps exiting and steadily walked down the creaking and protesting stairs. I dropped my bat to my waist and walked back to my bed. I pulled a chair to barricade my door, just in case, and breathed silently to calm down. My phone was out of battery, so I couldn't call the police, and my mom and dad were on the other side of the house. I would make a mad dash for my parents' room. or I could just scream at the top of my lungs and hope that they wake up before the intruder gets to me. It may also scare him off by me alerting my parents. So I screamed. About a minute later, I heard heavy footsteps rushing over and unlocking my door. My dad opened the door with a look of complete concern and dread. He asked me if I was okay, and I told him there was someone in the house. He grabbed my bat and hurried downstairs. He came back up a few minutes later after checking all the closets and general hiding places. He ordered me to go back to bed and lock my door. I was wide awake for half an hour, but eventually, somehow dozed off. I woke up to find my dad talking to my mom in the hallway. He told me the garage was pried open with some kind of rusty tool or crowbar. The intruder had left a note in my sister's room saying he didn't know where she was and that he missed her. I knew immediately that it was her boyfriend. What disturbed me the most was when I looked at my phone. It had a new message. I had wrote a message to a number I've never seen before. Late at night. The only problem was I hadn't texted anyone last night. And there was a response. It read, "Merry Christmas." There's one problem with this. I haven't sent a message to anyone with this number in my life. And my phone, it was in my room last night. This happened years ago, but still affects me to this day. The summer after I graduated high school, I was still living at home. I was up late one night and was packing for a camping trip with my friends. It was unbelievably hot and had the window open as I sat and folded clothes. It was around 2 in the morning, and the next thing I knew, there was a hand coming through the gap in the screen of my window. I screamed, and the hand flew back. I was stunned, but there was a part of me that wondered if it was my younger brother pranking me. I got up and looked out the window and just saw the figure of a man staring back at me. I ran into my brother's room, and he was there playing video games. We called the police, who came and searched the area. They found nothing, warned me and my parents to lock the windows and doors, and left. We were all still shaken up, and my mom had a feeling that he would come back. It turns out our mother's intuition was right. She went outside and waited on our back porch. After 20 minutes or so, she saw a man, dressed in black, slink into the backyard along the tree line. He hid behind a tree for a few seconds and ran to the other tree and hid there, slowly working his way toward my window. My mother yelled something to him, and he took off running. The police came back out, and again, found no trace of him. I opened the window again, not even the curtains. My parents installed some motion detecting lights, and that seemed to be the end of that. About 6 months later, my friend and I got an apartment downtown together. We were really excited. This was our first place on our own. The apartment wasn't exactly the best quality, but it was so fun to be living in the city. The downside was that it was street parking only. After a few weeks, my car was broken into. Nothing was taken but a single rose sat on the passenger seat. It was creepy, but I vowed to be vigilant and safe. I always tried to park close to the entrance, near the lights. But often it was difficult to get those spots, and I would often have to park further away on darker streets. Things quickly began escalating at this point. My car was broken into at least once a week. Most of the time, a flower was left, but once a pair of men's underwear was left. And even more creepily, once a bag of Tootsie Rolls, as they were my favorite candy. This made me wonder if the person knew me personally, and I started to become suspicious of everyone. There was laundry in the basement of the apartment, and one day I went down to get a load that finished drying. As I started to fold, I realized all of my undergarments, bras, and panties were gone. Another week, and I had a male friend over from high school, and his tires got slashed during the visit. By the time the first letter arrived, I had already started making plans to move elsewhere. The letter described a love for me that had been going on for years. He noted things that proved he had been watching me closely. I was able to arrange for another friend to take over my lease and moved in with another friend on the other side of the city. It was a secure building and had an underground parking garage that was only accessible to tenants. I felt much more secure, and the extra money spent was well worth the peace of mind. Things were quiet for a few months, and then my roommate got a boyfriend. Most of us were weary of Ashley's new boyfriend from the beginning. For one, they met on MySpace after he reached out to her. Another reason was that new boyfriend, Matt, was extremely good-looking. And while Ashley was a wonderful person, she just wasn't the type you would typically expect someone like him to date. Ashley was thrilled. She'd never had a boyfriend and really felt like he was a Prince Charming. I thought he was weird and creepy from the beginning. Matt was on the quiet side and always seemed to be sporting an uncomfortable, lingering smile. It was difficult to carry on any sort of conversation with him, because he would always make it weird with some random facts that were completely unrelated to what we were talking about. I had deleted my MySpace when the initial stalking began, but I created a dummy account to learn more about Matt. It didn't look like he really knew any of his friends in real life. There was only pictures of himself, and the rest of the information was vague. My friends and I gently tried to discourage her from seeing Matt. He technically hadn't done anything wrong, but he was just so strange. She would immediately get defensive and would shut the conversation down. Matt started to spend more time at the apartment, and I found myself finding any excuse I could to avoid coming home. One day, I came home from work and found Matt on my couch alone, drinking a beer. Ashley had been called into work and she told him he could just hang out. I was furious because I didn't want to spend any time with him, so I grabbed a beer and a snack and headed off to my room and shut the door. About 30 minutes or so, he knocked on my door and suggested we watch some TV and get to know each other better because we both loved Ashley. I didn't want to, but decided that maybe I needed to give it a try. He put on a movie, and I tried to just focus on the movie because I didn't want to talk. At one point I glanced over to Matt, and he was staring at me with a smile on his face. I snapped a "what" at him, and he just continued smiling and said, "I just can't believe it." "Believe what?" I asked. He said nothing and went back to watching the movie, still smiling. I had no idea what he was talking about, but the interaction had every hair standing up on my body. I excused myself and locked the door to my room. Another month or so went on, and I had managed to avoid being home for much anything beyond sleep and showering. Matt practically lived there and had even brought a bunch of his things to Ashley's room. I really didn't want to move again, but was beginning to look for other options. On their 6-month anniversary, I saw a huge banquet of flowers on the table, and an already opened card popped up next to it. I rolled my eyes and was about to leave when I decided to see what the weirdo wrote to her. When I opened the card, my heart started beating through my chest. The handwriting was exactly the same as the one my stalker had sent. I kept them as evidence and dug them out of my desk for comparison. The handwriting was unique and identical. Matt was the stalker. I called the police first. As they were on their way, I called Ashley and asked her to come over. She was at work but said she would be there when she could. I was terrified to tell her because I knew she would be shattered. The police took a statement from me and actually went to Ashley's work to get more information from her, and they ended up breaking the news. Apparently Ashley called Matt and left a furious message, even though the cops told her not to say anything, and he completely disappeared after that. There was no Matt or anyone matching his resemblance at the place he said he worked. Ashley had never been to his apartment because he said he had been staying with friends while trying to save money for a trip to Europe. His family lived out of state. She had never met a friend of his because he said they had a falling out because he was choosing to spend so much time with Ashley. It was all lies, and in the end, she was dating a stranger. We don't even know if Matt was his real name. The cherry on top of all this whole thing was when we went through Matt's things. He had left everything when we disappeared, and Ashley and I decided to go through everything. There was a duffel bag that was full of gym clothes, but in one of the compartments, there were about 10 pictures of me. All of them were taken from far away, with the exception of one of me sleeping. The sheets were current, so I know it had to have been at the current apartment. Before I started locking my bedroom door, a few pictures dated back to before the incident at my parents' house, which made us think that was him as well. 2 pairs of my missing underwear were there, and I shuddered to think what he did with the rest. A Starbucks lid with my red lipstick marks, a necklace I hadn't even noticed missing, a few other random sick souvenirs. The police never tracked him down. I decided to accept an opportunity overseas that I hadn't been considering and got the hell out of there. Unfortunately, Ashley and I quickly drifted apart. She had a really hard time accepting that her first love was a complete psycho. I think I had some underlying anger for believing all of his lies and letting him into our lives. I don't know what his end game was. Would he have tried to hurt me? Or was he simply content with being in my world? I'll never know. Being stalked changes you. Even when I lived across the world, I looked over my shoulder everywhere I went. I still have no social media accounts attached to my real name. I am married with children and know that he moved on to torment some other poor woman. But every time I visit my hometown, I am tense and keep a low profile. Part of me will always worry that Matt will resurface again.